Well, you need 218 to get anything done.
Yeah.
As Donna knows, 218 is the magic number. Every time a bill comes up, you need 218. So you've got holdouts. You might have moderate Democrats, conservative Democrats, a few of them, and they can hold out. We got another story here.
This is Gillum conceding in Florida.
In order to make ends meet. I'm extremely proud that this evening, the voters of the state of Florida decided to pass Amendment 4. Proud about that. That is just one step closer to getting us where it is that we need to be as a state. Y'all, I want to encourage you not to give up. I want to encourage you to stick to the fight. I want you to know that every step of this way, even though I won't have the blessing of serving as the next governor of the state of Florida, I still plan to be on the front lines right alongside every single one of you when it comes to standing up for what it is that we believe in. As I said all along the campaign trail, power sees nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. We still have to be willing to show up every single day and demand our seat at the table. We got to be willing, inside of elections and outside of elections, to say that our voices still matter, that we still have relevance. I still believe and I still trust the voters. We may not have all shown up in the way that we thought and hoped that we would, but I still believe that there are still more of us who believe in what is common and what is decent and what is right. And I believe in the long run, good always wins out over evil. I still believe that. Many of you all along the trail heard me talk rather repeatedly about my grandmother. Someone pointed out that she was the real winner of the governor's race. My grandmother, who poured so much into us, because my mother and father, as I would often share, would have to get up so early in the morning and go off to work. They would load us up in the car and take us over to my grandmama's house where we would sleep just a little bit longer. And my grandmother would often have a ritual. It was a two-step ritual. The first phase of that is that she'd grab her bottle of olive oil, sometimes cooking oil, whatever the shiniest oil was that she can get her hands on. And she would build a cross across my forehead. It was her way of sending us out into the day with a blessing that no harm would come our way. And then she would have this refrain where she would say, "Boy, go to school, mind your teachers, get your lesson, and one day bring that education home." She would say, bring it home for your little brother and your little sister who don't know what it is yet. Bring it home. Bring it home for that little boy down the street that you play with. God knows where he's going to end up. Bring it home. She said, bring it home for your mama and for your daddy who get out there every single day, going to work on somebody else's job in order to keep a roof over your head and clothes on your back and food on the table. Bring it home. As I shared with you on the campaign trail, I didn't always know what my grandmother was trying to communicate, but I would come to learn that what she was saying is that it wasn't just about me. Y'all, I'm reminded this evening that it is not about me. That it's not about my wife, not Chris King, not Kristen. This is about all of us. This is about the collective. This is about the belief that if we all do good, we can all do good. And we can do good by doing good. That if we all put our oars in the water and row in the same direction, that we can all get further than by ourselves. I still believe that to be true this evening. Even in defeat, I believe that to be true. The question is, we have a choice to make tomorrow morning. Are we going to wake up and bask in sorrow and defeat? Or are we going to get up and reassert ourselves to the mission at hand? Are we going to get up and fight for the things that we believe in? Are we going to get up and say that we still deserve our seat at the table? Look, I said before that I believe that we have to have a table in this state that is long enough, that is wide enough, that is deep enough to fit all of us. I still believe that we got to have that table. But y'all, we're just going to have to do a little bit more work in order to build that table. We're going to have to do a little bit more in order to make our way to it. If there's not a chair there for us, let's pull up our own folding chair.
Let's show our work here a little bit. Here's what just happened. We got alerted that Gillum was giving the speech. We're calling DeSantis the apparent winner in Florida, though this had not happened. We had not called the race before the speech started. And let us recap a couple of races here at the top of the hour, since we just passed into 11 p.m. Eastern Time. In California, we have a couple incumbents returning to the Senate. As we just mentioned, DeSantis, we are calling the apparent winner in Florida. Let's go out to California. The Senate race, Dianne Feinstein is going back to the U.S. Senate. In Hawaii, the Democrat Mazie Hirono is going back to the U.S. Senate. We talked about two races tonight in Minnesota. Tina Smith was the appointee going back to the U.S. Senate as a Democrat. In the state of Washington, too early to call. Remember these West Coast races, a lot of them just coming online for us. Steve Kornacki, we have not record kept as we look at Republican control of the Senate. We have not record kept on a couple of House races, and a couple of big names have fallen here in the last hour.
Yeah, let's go through what we've seen recently. Let's start in Virginia's 7th District. We were talking about this all night. Abigail Spanberger, the Democrat, we are now declaring the winner over Dave Bratt, the Republican incumbent. Richmond suburbs here. The bookends here. It was Bratt, 2014, knocked off Eric Cantor, one of the big political upsets of the modern era. 4 years later, he is losing his seat in Virginia's suburbs. That's a Democratic pickup. The 22nd District of New York, Claudia Tenney, very conservative Republican incumbent. She is going to lose to Anthony Brindisi. How about the 19th District, the Hudson Valley? Wow. John Faso, Republican incumbent, losing to Antonio Delgado. Of course, the ads Republicans ran against Delgado in this campaign became a source of controversy. Delgado is going to win there. The 6th District of Illinois, outside Chicago. Peter Roskam, Republican incumbent, Clinton District. We've been seeing this combination a lot tonight. He is going to be defeated. The 1st District of Iowa. This is one of those places that surged by double digits towards Donald Trump in 2016. Northeast Iowa, Rod Blum, Republican incumbent. He is going to lose. Abby Finkenauer. Iowa. I think she was poised to be the youngest woman ever elected to Congress, and then you had that big upset in Joe Crowley's district earlier this year. I think she will now become the second youngest woman ever elected to Congress. That a Democratic pickup as well. There's also, we can tell you about New Jersey's 2nd District here. Jeff Van Drew has declared victory, according to the Philadelphia Inquirer here. But Seth Grossman, this is an interesting story that is this close. Seth Grossman was disowned by the National Republican Party and denounced by the chairman of the New Jersey State Republican Party for racist and bigoted comments. The words there of the New Jersey Republican chairman. The fact that it's sitting at 58, and we haven't officially called it at this point, at this hour, is somewhat noteworthy. But if Van Drew does hang on in our projection, then that would be a Democratic pickup there as well. Also, just coming across the wire, the 7th District of Texas. This is Harris County, Houston, suburban. This is another one of those. I can show you on the screen here. A Hillary Clinton district in 2016 flips to the Democrat. Lizzie Fletcher taking out John Culberson. You want to go way back in time, a half a century, when the Republican Party was in its infancy in Texas. Where did it have one of its first big breakthroughs? It was in this district, and it was by a man named George H.W. Bush, who won a House seat here about 50 years ago. Seat's been Republican since then, no longer. Democrat Lizzie Fletcher takes that one over. And we have also, we said there were a couple of seats here that Republicans were targeting, that were Democratic seats that Republicans were targeting. One more Republicans have picked up. This is the 8th District of Minnesota. This is the Iron Range. This is an area that really swung hard to Donald Trump in 2016. Blue collar, traditionally Democratic, swung hard to Trump. Open seat, Republican. A former hockey player there, Pete Stauber, wins it. So put this together. You got those 2 Republican gains so far in Democratic territory. Then you have 18, 21, 22. So a net Democratic gain at this hour of 20 seats. Of course, 23 officially gives them control. There's a whole bunch more where they seem to be on the verge of victory. So they're very close to crossing that line of 23. And then the question just becomes, how high are we counting in terms of majority?
Steve, can I just ask you an Iowa question? I see you've got another couple of Iowa districts up there that you don't yet have calls in. How is Steve King doing? I'm just wondering if he's going to be in a caucus with Mr. Grossman, if Mr. Grossman gets that race.
Yeah, there you go. About 135,000 votes votes in here, about a third of the district. Let's see where this is coming in from. It is sort of scattered. I mean, this is a Trump plus 27 district here. So Steve King, this is the most conservative part of Iowa, sort of northwest Iowa right there. Steve King leading by 5,000 votes, about a third of the vote in right there. And also one more while we're on Iowa, we can just check in on David. And look at this now, with almost 2/3 of the vote in. David Young, Republican incumbent here, trailing by 8 points, a 20,000 vote gap. So I'll tell you, there is a scenario right here. 4 districts in Iowa. You got the Democrat surviving in the other one. Rod Blum goes down in 1. If David Young goes down in 3, and if Steve King after this survives in 4, after the chairman of the Republican Congressional Campaign Committee denounced him, he could be, if he survives, the only Republican coming back to Congress from Iowa, which might enhance his stature in a backward way.
And right now, the Iowa governor's race is too close to call at this point in terms of whether or not, in terms of statewide elected Iowa politicians as well. Do you have that? Yeah.
And you can put that right up on the screen. Kim Reynolds.
Too early to call, forgive me.
Kim Reynolds, of course, and she's the interim governor, trailing by about 25,000 votes right now in that governor's race.
Iowa, Kansas, these states are turning out to be absolutely fascinating tonight in terms of Democratic prospects. I do want to give us one additional call. I've been focusing on governor's races tonight, keeping an eye on those, and we do have a call in Oregon. Now, we think of Oregon as a deep blue state, but there was question as to whether or not the Oregon incumbent governor, Kate Brown, would be able to win. That's not Kate Brown. That is a projection. NBC News projecting that in California, the governor will be Democrat Gavin Newsom. And thank you, Oregon governor, projected winner Kate Brown, the Democrat, who is the incumbent governor, facing actually a tough race in Oregon against Newt Bueller, who is the Republican there. Oregon has quirky politics right now and has been through some gubernatorial scandals with the antecedent governor to Kate Brown, but she will be winning tonight. And Gavin Newsom will now become a figure of national renown as the head of the Republic of California.
Our family has changed yet again here in the studio. Nicole Wallace, Donna Edwards, Steve Schmidt now join us. Nicole, your summation of what we've just witnessed thus far?
You know, I think it's Democrats went into this night with such high expectations for themselves. Republicans, you know, dare I say, are mostly numb inside. I mean, the Trump presidency, if you still have a conscience, it's been knocked silly. And if you're all in with Trump, then you know, this is probably better than what you were prepared for. I think Republicans focused on real emotional letdowns in Beto not getting across the finish line, feeling you know, distraught about the results at this point in Florida and Georgia. But I think the bigger story, the story with more consequences, and they start. We talked about this already. That the Democrats now control the House is really an earthquake, a political earthquake, an investigative earthquake, and the first time that Donald Trump as president will be accountable to anybody.
He'll have a check on his power for the first time.
I mean, that is a huge story and a bigger deal. And if you think that Donald Trump is what's broken, winning those state houses, winning some of those governor's races wasn't going to fix it. But taking control of the House might.
Donna Edwards, same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for Democrats, we tried to actually temper our expectations because of 2016. Mm-hmm. I think tonight is proving to be a really good night. And, you know, when I look at the potential governing majority, I see a majority that's actually going to be able to get some things done. And yes, a check on Donald Trump. A part of that check is doing things that the president just avoids. And so, you know, I look at tonight and just say, you see a place like in Houston with Culbertson losing. Yeah. I mean, tonight, Republicans already have lost 3 chairmen. Not just, you know, the rank and file members. They have lost 3 chairmen in Culbertson and Pete Sessions and Peter Roskam. Mm-hmm. That's part of their leadership core, mm-hmm. and that's very damaging to them inside their caucus.
Steve Schmidt, does anyone grow courage within the Republican Party because the returning Congress will see a shift of power against this president?
Absolutely not. The Republican Party won't be chastened. It'll be emboldened. The Republicans that have lost, the lesson that will be taken from this election is they lost because they didn't embrace Trumpism fully. That had they engaged in the incitement tactics that will have worked in states like Ohio, where Mike DeWine was elected governor, in Florida, where Gillum went down to DeSantis. That's the lesson. That's the takeaway from Republicans. But we shouldn't bury the lead here. And the lead is this. We know something right now that we didn't know this morning. And that is, come January, there's a check on Donald Trump. Democrats hold the subpoena power. The unchecked corruption is at its end. All of the Trump officials who have abused the taxpayer, who have serially lied to the country, they now will be held to account. I disagree with Donna that very much is going to get done. I think nothing will get done. Our politics is broken. It's paralyzed. There will be chaos. It will get worse. But Donald Trump will be much less able to abuse his power than he was for the last 2 years. That's the headline out of tonight. The other thing that comes out of tonight is this, is Donald Trump has stoked what I've called a cold civil war in this country. He's pitted the country regionally against each other. He's turned different races against each other, different religions against each other, and we see the battle lines and where they're being drawn. Trumpism was repudiated in suburban America, in urban America today. It was emboldened and validated in rural America today. And that's going to have enormous implications as we get ready for the presidential election.
I wonder if that invasion headed this way from the South will take on a slightly less urgent standing with the results of the election. Steve Kornacki, I'm told we had another flip in the House.
Yeah, and this is we set this up earlier as a potential one. It's now official, and this is the surprise of the night, at least just in terms of where the expectations were. Nobody was talking coming into the night about the 5th District of Oklahoma, but Kendra Horn is her name. She is officially declared the winner here. This district, you go all the way back to 1975. There was a Democrat who represented this district who switched parties to the Republican Party. It has been in Republican hands ever since. Now Kendra Horn will become the first Democrat to represent this district in more than 40 years. This is a district that Donald Trump won by 13 points. There are some issues in Oklahoma. Obviously, the Republican winning that governor's race tonight, but there have been some issues with the Republican Party in Oklahoma having trouble in some local contests, some state legislative. That might have rubbed off here as well. Steve Russell was elected first in 2014. So the surprise of the night so far, but also you just look at the net gains. Look, 11, 15, 18, 21, 22. This is the 23rd pickup now for Democrats. Now, they've lost 2, remember, so they're sitting there at 21 in terms of where is that official, where are they going to officially cross the line. There are a number of races, as we said, that could be called soon. The Democrats leading here in the 3rd District, for instance. How about this one? Leonard Lance, Republican incumbent. He's been there for 10 years in New Jersey. A lot of the vote counted now. He continues to trail there. New Jersey, too. We've now called New Jersey, too. I mentioned this one a minute ago. Seth Grossman denounced by his own party. They refused to support his candidacy. He refused to leave the race. He is going to lose this one. I think notable, it took until 70% of the vote was in to actually get this call made. This a lot closer than I think anybody was expecting, but the Democrats do get the pickup here. There are a number, how about this one, the 1st District of Pennsylvania, Brian Fitzpatrick hanging on barely. This is a Clinton district. Here's a name, Chris Collins, running for re-election under indictment. He is leading right now, but that is still too close to call. And we have one more I did want to show you. This is another one of those Clinton districts, and Jason Lewis, a Republican incumbent, trailing him. Lewis, of course, there was controversy during the campaign about comments he'd made. He was a radio talk show host before entering Congress, and all sorts of old comments he made surfaced during this campaign, putting him in some trouble there. Steve's re-election campaign.
Just sneak in the 3 Jersey districts. No one will notice. I think. Well, I guess we got 2 more. 3 and 7. Okay, Andy Kim.
Yeah, and look at this one. And this is a real easy one to see with very few votes left here. If you just go, I said real easy. Now I got to go all the way across the country.
I'm sorry.
Look at
See
this.
what we've done.
2 counties tell the story here. This is the Republican county. Almost all the vote is in. This is the more Democratic county. A little bit more to come. Is there enough in Burlington County to get Andrew Kim and an extra 2,400 votes? Might be too much for him, but MacArthur in a fight for his political career right now.
And one more. Jersey 7?
Oh, Jersey, yes, this is Leonard Lance. Again, he is falling short right now with a little bit left to come in there.
Tom Malinowski will be, again, a national profile Democrat if he makes his way into the House. He was an assistant secretary of state in the Obama administration. He is eloquent. He's absolutely star material. If he beats Leonard Lance, that'll be the start of something for him.
And Lance was that endangered species, a moderate Republican out in the suburbs outside of New York City. Stabenow reelected. We have this much into us. While we were having that conversation in Michigan, the returning Democrat, another break for us. We'll have more when we come right back. Still more live vote returns coming in. We are back in a couple races we have not record kept on, and that is projected winner of the Ohio governor's race. John Kasich, of course, was not in the race. Mike DeWine and Tim Walz in Minnesota for governor. Georgia, all of you wondering, too early to call, early in terms of the counting of the vote.
Let's go right to Steve Kornacki.
Yeah, it's the milestone moment here. We said Democrats need to get a net gain of 23. They lost those two earlier, but their 25th gain, which is a net gain of 23, just came in. It is the 2nd District of Minnesota. Jason Lewis, we were talking about him a minute ago. He has been unseated. We're projecting Angie Craig defeats Jason Lewis. And again, what that means, we have 25 Democratic pickups here on their target list. We look at the seats that Republicans were going after. They've picked up 2, that one in the Iron Range, that one in Pennsylvania, 14. So right now, that gives the Democrats the net gain of 23. And that's what they needed to get control.
Amy Klobuchar was live on our air earlier this hour saying that the Democrats would flip House seats in Minnesota. We now see that there. We also see Democrat Tim Walz, who left the House in order to run for governor, taking the governorship there, too.
And I've just learned Dave Wasserman, who's our expert on the House, says over 100 women have been elected to the House.
For the first time ever?
Yeah.
Hey, wow. That seems like we should have a cake or something.
Or something. Graphic.
Seems like we should do something. What we do have is Lawrence O'Donnell, who is in California for us. Lawrence, the polls there have been closed for 22 minutes. We have seen a call in the governor's race. Gavin Newsom will need to be the new Democratic governor of California. Dianne Feinstein has also been handily reelected U.S. Senator. We now await the long walk through the House seats in California. You were bullish on Democratic chances earlier tonight, saying that you thought that Democrats would flip a lot of those 7 seats they're aiming at in California. How are you feeling now?
Well, so far, what the Democrats were working on, what they were trying to do, they have achieved. They have basically been flipping every one of the seats that they targeted to flip, and they've picked up a few more along the way that they weren't necessarily expecting. This looks like there will be a Democratic flip, a flip of over 30 seats and a pickup of probably about 30 seats. There's 7 very likely flips for Democrats right now in California. That's without any surprises. Now, if there's a surprise or two, and there could be, then we'd be even higher. But it's starting to look like by the end of the night, by the time we've counted what's happened in California, the Democrats will have flipped at least 30 seats and picked up possibly 30 thereabouts.
This is a night that is going to stretch into the wee hours, and we sort of knew that that was going to happen. Lawrence, I also wanted to get your take on what we're seeing in terms of these governor's races. We've seen Chris Kobach, for example, lose that governor's race in Kansas. We've seen Democrats pick up the governorship in Minnesota. We see 2 close-to-call races in places like South Dakota, too early to call in Iowa. Democrats knew they were going to have a pretty good night in terms of the governorships. How do you think that changes national politics heading into these next couple of years?
Well, I think it puts the United States senators, the 22 Republican United States senators who are running for re-election 2 years from now, are all tonight looking at their states and saying, what does this mean to me? Pat Roberts running for re-election in Kansas, for example. What does it mean to him that Kansas has just elected a Democratic member of the House? And he's not going to ignore something like that. Ben Sass, Mitch McConnell, 76 years old. has to look at these results tonight, look at the loss of the House of Representatives, and will he look at it and see what Paul Ryan saw when he took over the speakership for these last 2 years? It seemed pretty clear to me a couple of months into Paul Ryan's run in this term of his speakership that he was not going to run for re-election because it seemed pretty clear to Paul Ryan they were going to lose the House of Representatives. Is Mitch McConnell going to, in January, take a look at the way things are and decide he's not going to run for re-election? What does that do if there's an open seat in Kentucky? Mitch McConnell knows what it is to lose the power of the majority leader. And I don't believe if Mitch McConnell thinks that the Republicans are going to lose the Senate, that he would want to sentence himself to 6 years as the possibly minority leader of the United States Senate.
Lawrence, do you feel like you know what to expect from Nancy Pelosi now that she is going to ascend back to the speakership? She's obviously the only woman to have ever held that job, the highest-ranking woman ever in American politics. She's been a boogeyman of the right and of the Republican Party forever.
Boogie woman.
Boogie woman, thank you. Boogie person. That was a great movie, actually, wasn't it? But she's now ascending back to the leadership, and there's a lot of noise always in the Beltway press about how she's potentially in danger as a leader and how she's this drag on her caucus. It seems clear to me that she is definitely going to be speaker, and that even if she allows, even if there's going to be some votes against her, that's fine. She's perfectly comfortable with it. She's got a really thick skin. What do you think she's going to be like as speaker heading back up there, given that she's been there once already?
Well, she has already said she doesn't expect to serve long as speaker. So she has joined this discussion of what happens next. But she definitely wants to be the next speaker. She will be. There's no question about that. But she may announce early on that she is not running for re-election, for example. The last time we saw a kind of orderly, voluntary release of the speakership really was Tip O'Neill, who Chris Matthews will remember. Tip O'Neill actually announced before his own personal last re-election campaign that it would be his last re-election campaign. He told the voters, this is the last time you will re-elect me to the House, which was in effect telling the House it's the last time that I'll be speaker. So he did that well in advance, farther in advance than anyone has since. Paul Ryan did it when the writing was on the wall and there wasn't a chance to hold on. He knew, last year there wasn't a chance to hold on to this Republican margin in the House of Representatives. So I expect Nancy Pelosi to be part of looking for who is next, who should be next. And I think people are quickly going to, when they start exploring that, they're going to quickly start to look at another Californian, Adam Schiff.
Lawrence O'Donnell, the night, as they say, is young. It is but a puppy. You're going to be there for a really important and interesting night in the state of California.
The night is even younger in California.
That's right. I'm on the next flight, if that were true. Thank you, my friend. We'll be checking back in with you. We have here on the set, we should not forget, a former chair of the Republican Party. I'm looking at you. You got to look over here. There you go. You got to wear this. You got to. And here's my question, Mr. Chairman.
We don't make eye contact anymore.
Here's my question for Michael Steele, a serious question. If you were chairman today and you had your chief lieutenants in a staff meeting next Monday morning, what would you say? What would be your damage assessment and your call to arms?
Well, the first thing would be that the damage assessment, take a look at the field of play, find where we were the weakest, and then begin to understand exactly how the Democrats were successful. I had to do that in 2009. I walked in the door, Barack Obama's down across the street, down the street, and winning with that big election. We just lost in 06 and 08. We were hemorrhaging leadership. We were hemorrhaging dollars. We were hemorrhaging, most importantly, grassroots activists. So you have to assess why you are where you are. The problem I fear, and Nicole knows this also well, is that we will not learn anything from this because Donald Trump won't allow them to learn anything from this. And by them, I mean Republican leaders, Republican activists, the men and women who actually built the success that we found in 2010. We will not learn anything because the emphasis is still going to rotate around one personality and one idea. And the idea is not GOP. The idea is not Republican principles of value. The idea is, what does Donald Trump want? The only caution I would say to my friends across the aisle is do not be so quick to start talking about hearings and subpoenas and tax returns, because to do that, you are playing exactly into Donald Trump's hands. You are on page 1 of his playbook, which begins probably with a tweet in 3 hours.
And, Mr. Chairman, the voters tonight are saying pre-existing conditions. They're not saying get his tax returns.
That's right. That's exactly right. And I think that's, again, you talk about what Republicans have to learn, what Democrats have to learn is understand why you won. Understand what brought you to this moment.
Isn't there a deal there?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely.
You know who the perfect person to talk to at this exact moment in the conversation
would
would be?
Who would that be, Rachel?
If we could get Congressman Adam Schiff, who is the incoming chairman of the Intelligence Committee, what
are the odds?
Hi, Congressman Adam Schiff of California. When we speak about him, sometimes he appears. Congressman, we're really, really happy to have you with us tonight. According to NBC News projections, you are on deck to be the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee as your party appears poised to take control of the House. What's your reaction to that news and to that big new responsibility that you've just been given?
Well, I'm very grateful to people all over the country, millions of people who've been really working day and night for 2 years to make this happen, to essentially retake the control in the direction of the country, to make sure that the Congress once again can play its role as a co-equal branch of government. So I feel enormously grateful for all of those that work so hard. And this is a big responsibility. Look, it's a big vote of confidence by the American people. And we're going to set a positive agenda going forward on just the issues that you were talking about. Making sure that people can afford their health care, that if they have pre-existing conditions, they can keep their health care, that we address the needs of so many Americans who, yes, are working, but not earning enough to get by. But we also intend to make sure that the oversight role that the Republicans so completely abdicated, we once again, the Congress once again undertakes and does so responsibly.
Congressman Devin Nunes is one of the Republicans who abdicated that oversight role in the Russia investigation. Your committee's investigation abruptly cut short. Greg Miller, who covers national security for the Washington Post, tweeted tonight that you, as the new chairman of the House Intel Committee, will bring back Trump Jr. You'll bring back perhaps Roger Stone or Paul Manafort, other witnesses. Do you have a list? Do you know what you're going to do as the chairman? And are you able to tell us who you want to bring back?
You know, I'm not able to tell you that tonight. We're certainly going to look at the work that we were able to do. We're going to look at the work that the GOP obstructed on our committee. And it was really worse than abdicating the responsibility of the committee. The majority went further to be complicit in the president's attacks on the independence of the Justice Department, on the men and women of the FBI, on our intelligence community. So we also need to restore the relationship between our committee and the intelligence community and law enforcement. But look, at the time when we formally take control of the House, that won't be until January. And we'll have to see what Bob Mueller has been able to do and what Bob Mueller has been able to say, either via indictment or via report. And that will also guide what we intend to do in our committee.
A former national security official who worked for Democratic and Republican presidents reminded me today that legislation was never passed to protect Robert Mueller's investigation, making your work and your committee's work all the more important. What do you think the prospects are for Robert Mueller being allowed to complete his work, with Donald Trump maybe viewing tonight's results as some sort of endorsement of his presidency?
I think that the chances that Bob Mueller will be able to finish his work improved for the reason that our committee and others like the Government Reform Committee and the Judiciary Committee, which under Republican leadership served as basically surrogates for the president in their efforts to batter down the Justice Department, to give the president a pretext to fire people in the Justice Department. All of that, that tearing down of the independence of these institutions is going to end. Now, that doesn't mean that the president can't still act in ways that are antithetical to the rule of law and the interests of justice, but it does mean that we're better able to protect our institutions and see this investigation, I hope, complete.
Hey, Congressman, we're going to join Nancy Pelosi in progress. Just in the closing seconds before we do, I have a question for you about the integrity of our election system. How thorough and complete, in your mind, is Russian intervention into our government and our systems? Do you look at any numbers on a night like tonight and worry there are any shenanigans going on? Do you think we have integrity in all the numbers we've reported tonight?
Well, I certainly hope that we have integrity in the numbers that you reported tonight. Honestly, as we've approached Election Day, my concerns over what the Russians were doing were less than my concerns over what the Secretary of State in Georgia was doing, over the elections equipment in Texas, over what was going on in Nebraska, over what might have been self-inflicted wounds in terms of our election integrity, but as well the fact that so many states still, at this day and age, after what we've been through, do not have a paper trail, I think is just negligence on its face, and we're going to have to do far better than that in the future.
Congressman Adam Schiff, Chairman-elect Adam Schiff, thank you very much for joining us from Burbank, California tonight. We appreciate it. And on the left-hand side of your screen, we'll listen into this. This is, in effect, the management structure of the new House of Representatives on the Democratic side.
Virginia. And the issue of California. D.K. Butterfield of North Carolina. Barbara Lee of California. Henry Cuellar of Texas. Karen Bass of California. Don Beyer of Virginia. And Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania. We all join in thanking all of you. Many of you are our VIPs, our real VIPs, our volunteers in politics, the women and men who've mobilized in historic numbers, who saw what this GOP Congress was doing and refused to stand still. Every call you made, every door you knocked, every text you sent, every conversation you had made the difference between winning and losing in this election. Thanks to you, we owned the ground. Thanks to you. Thanks to you, tomorrow will be a new day in America. Remember this feeling, know the power to win. And almost all the congratulations to those dynamic, diverse, incredible candidates who have taken back the House for the American people. Let us salute all of our candidates. All of our candidates. Today is more than about Democrats and Republicans. It's about restoring the Constitution's checks and balances to the Trump administration. It's about stopping the GOP and Mitch McConnell's assaults on Medicare, Medicaid, the Affordable Care Act, and the health care of 130 million Americans living with pre-existing medical conditions. Let's hear it more for pre-existing medical conditions. It's about ending wealthy special interest free reign over Washington, but more than anything, it's about what a new Democratic majority will mean in the lives of hardworking Americans. That's what it's about. Democrats pledge a Congress that works for the people. For the people. Lower the cost of health care by lowering the cost of prescription drugs. Raise workers' wages with strong economic growth by rebuilding the infrastructure of America. Clean up corruption to make Washington work for all Americans. We will take real, very, very strong legislative action to negotiate down the price control of prescription drugs that is burdening seniors and families across America. We will deliver a transformational investment in America's infrastructure to create more good-paying jobs, rebuilding our roads, bridges, schools, water systems, broadband networks, and schools and housing and beyond. We will drain the swamp of dark interest money in our elections, because when we do, Americans have greater confidence in everything their Congress works on, from health care to taxes to guns to clean air and clean water for our children, when they know that the people's interest will prevail, not the dark special interest. In stark contrast to the GOP Congress, the Democratic Congress will be led with transparency and openness, so that the public can see what's happening and how it affects them, and that they can weigh in with the members of Congress and with the President of the United States. We will have accountability, and we will strive for bipartisanship with fairness on all sides. We will have a responsibility to find our common ground where we can, stand our ground where we can't, but we must try. We have a bipartisan marketplace of ideas that makes our democracy strong. A Democratic Congress will work for solutions that bring us together, because we have all had enough of division. The American people want peace. They want results. They want us to work for positive results for their lives. Our founders believed in a principle that they knew must guide our nation. First, in our Declaration, they promised life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But they gave us guidance, e pluribus unum, from any one. The founders could never have imagined how vast our country would become, how many we would be, how different we would be from each other. But they knew we had to be one. Unity. Unity for our country. And that today the American people have spoken to restore that vision. With this new Democratic majority, we will honor the vision of our founders for a country having a legitimate debate, but remembering that we are one country. We'll honor the sacrifices of our men and women in uniform and their families who have made us the land of the free and the home of the brave. To build a better future worthy of their sacrifice. And we must honor and respect the aspirations of our children. Elections are about the future and what we do for our children's future. So thank you all for making the future better for all of America's children. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you all very much.
Suppose she could be referred to as Speaker-elect of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi of California. While I'm certain she didn't mean it this way, she just said, let's hear it for pre-existing medical conditions. That's a heck of a quote. Anywho, we'll rush to a break. We'll come back with more of our election returns as we cover this momentous night in American politics, still playing out from east to west to California. Here's an important state, a tough state to figure out politically because it's several states in one, as so many of them are. But here is your new projected GOP senator from the great state of Missouri. We had an interview with Claire McCaskill earlier this evening. She knew she faced a tough road. This one's going to hurt the Democrats. They wanted it badly. Claire McCaskill is giving what amounts to a concession speech. Let's listen in.
He really has had to endure, especially in this campaign. You don't even know how nasty they were. It was terrible what they tried to do to him. And then look at this, huh? These are my siblings and my children and my stepchildren and a small part of my grandchildren. Many of them are too young to be up this late. So how can I look to the future and be anything but blessed, right? But I want to say my biggest thanks to the people of Missouri.
We love you,
The people of Missouri allowed me, beginning when I was 28 years old, to serve the public, to serve them, to be a public servant. And for decades, I have been blessed to get up every day and work in a challenging and interesting job, trying to make things better in people's lives. It has been such an honor, and this state drives me crazy, but I love every corner of it. I really do. I mean, I even love the reddest of the red counties, and there were a lot of them tonight. Because the people of this state are down to earth, and they're kind, and they are, well, they're like family to me. And so I feel like we've run a lot of elections together, Missouri and me. My record ends at 22-2. Not a bad record.
McCaskill, you heard her there, her record 22-2, but there on the left, Josh Hawley is your new Republican senator-elect from the great state of Missouri. I'm told Mr. Kornacki is ready to catch us up on some of the races we have not paid close attention to all evening.
Well, we got a squeaker in Wisconsin. Tony Evers, the Democrat, trying to unseat Scott Walker. The fourth shot Democrats have taken at Walker. A 12,000 vote lead for Evers because just in the last few minutes, a big batch of votes came in from Dane County. Think of Madison, University of Wisconsin, big Democratic bastion there. And now most of the vote is suddenly in Dane. This thing was separated by a couple hundred votes as of a few minutes ago with that big batch from Dane that just came in. About a 12,500 vote statewide lead for Tony Evers over Scott Walker. Not a lot of vote left. Where is the vote left? Probably the biggest single place, Brown County, about half the vote in. This is Green Bay and the surroundings. Scott Walker doing very well here, so you'll expect him to make up some of that here. You'll also in Barron County, this is a place where Donald Trump got about 60% of the vote in 2016. You can expect Walker to make up some there. Also, though, these are some smaller counties down here. Evers might do well here. One thing I've been looking for in Wisconsin, this state was home proportionally to the most, they called these things pivot counties in 2016. They voted for Obama 08, Obama 12, Trump 2016. There are 20 of them in Wisconsin, a lot of them right down in this corner of the state. And you can see Evers winning back, I think he's winning back about a half dozen of those pivot counties. So that's the development there in Wisconsin. We'll continue to keep an eye on it. In Montana, excuse me, John Tester trying to hold off Matt Rosendale. You see Tester leading right now statewide. Here's the thing I can quickly show you to go through this. Tester, of course, had a close re-election in 2012. In a lot of these key counties, if you just start looking at them, Flathead County, Republican County, but in 2012, when Tester won re-election, he only got 37% here. In this core Republican county, he's doing 8 points better. Remember, he won statewide, getting 37% of the vote here. Now, how about Lewis and Clark? You know, this is a Helena. This is a more, this is a Democratic county. Tester got 54% of the vote here when he was narrowly reelected in 2012. He's up to 62. We are seeing this all over the place here. He's running 7 or 8 points better in these key counties than he did when he narrowly won re-election. You see the designation we've put on this is it is too early to call, but you see Tester out in front there in Montana.
So, Steve, can I just so there are 5 Democratic senators who are up for re-election tonight who are not just from states that Trump held, but they're from states that Trump held by double digits in 2016. McCaskill, Heitkamp, Donnelly, Manchin, and Tester. So far, we know that McCaskill, Heitkamp, and Donnelly are all out. Manchin has definitely held on to his seat. And Tester, as you said, too early to call, but he looks like he's well situated compared to his previous election campaigns.
You would rather be Tester looking at the numbers I just showed you than Rosendale right now.
Okay, let me ask you about one other thing. You mentioned that squeaker of a governor's race in Wisconsin. Can we possibly go to Iowa?
Yes.
And look at the governor's race in Iowa? I've been watching these numbers come come in, and that seems wicked close, too.
Yes, Kim Reynolds has just taken the lead here, and I have to catch up exactly where the vote is left to come in. But obviously, Story County here, probably the biggest single gap we have on the board. Again, what is the margin statewide here? It is a 20,000 vote lead for Kim Reynolds. And again, about 10% to come here. I have to look closer to find out exactly where, if there's one party with an advantage there, but a 20,000 vote edge right now for Kim Reynolds.
Can I ask you about one other governor's race?
Yes.
It is the excruciatingly slow-moving Georgia governor's race.
Yes. So let's it is a slow-moving race. Take a look here. Brian Kemp, I think the question right now, and you can see most of the vote in, the question right now with Kemp leading by 3 points, is he going to finish over 50% and avoid that runoff? And again, the guidance we're getting from our decision desk is they think he is more likely than not to do that, but they're not calling it just yet. But I do want to point out one other aspect of this Georgia governor's race I said to keep an eye on. Just take a look at Gwinnett County right here. Stacey Abrams right now winning this thing by 12 points. Just look at the modern voting history of Gwinnett County. Hillary Clinton, I said, first Democrat to ever win this thing in 2016. Romney got it by almost 10 points in 2012. McCain got it by 11 points, and it was bigger Republican margins before that. You see the trajectory here. Abrams now, this is one of the best Democratic performances really ever in this county. Well, it's, it is in a governor's race in the modern times. What that has done, that performance, I think, take a look at this in the House, the 7th District of Georgia. This is a Republican incumbent. Look at this. Carolyn Bordeaux, Democrat. All the vote is now in. She's 10,000 votes ahead in this race. It's because of that county I just showed you. It's because of Gwinnett County. 80% of this district, Gwinnett County. There's a rounding error, so it adds up to a little bit more. But Bordeaux, you could say, potentially here powered by that Stacey Abrams campaign in part, getting huge vote out of Gwinnett County, and it looks like on the verge of taking out Rob Woodall, Republican congressman.
Now, can we also see Georgia 6? Is that the race of Karen Handel's race?
That's right next door, yes. Now, again, here's a squeaker. 800 votes. 100% is in right now. Karen Handel leading by 800. And I'm just going to quickly see the 3 component counties here. This is, DeKalb. This is the Democratic base here. You're looking at about what Ossoff got out of there. Fulton County, in that special election they had last year, handled it a little bit better in Fulton County. This is about what she got out of it. This looks very close to a repeat of that special election last year, with Handel not quite as strong in Fulton County and not quite as strong in Cobb County. But it looks like, and let's just see it, make sure it hasn't changed again, an 805 vote margin.
Wow.
Right there, right now. Karen Handel looks like barely. But again, that is the Democratic strength around Atlanta. The Republicans got their areas out in the rural areas, the ex-urban areas. And that's why Kemp is leading in the governor's race. But the Democratic energy in the Atlanta area brought this thing 4 points closer, basically, than that special election we saw last year. And again, I think has Rob Woodall on the verge of defeat there in the 7th district.
That is remarkable. I mean, in that Lucy McBath, Karen Handel race, obviously Karen Handel, tons of name recognition, in part because of that competition in that special election. But also Lucy McBath coming out of really nowhere, first-time candidate, incredibly charismatic, getting it within 800 votes. Just an amazing story.
And Steve King just won.
Steve King in Iowa 4, absolutely. There are 2 seats that have flipped in Iowa, though, are there not?
So the first district, Rod Blum has been defeated. We've been keeping an eye here. 84% of the vote, I should say, in the 3rd district. David Young continues to trail 15,000 votes behind Republican incumbents. So if this holds, Steve King goes back to Washington as the only Republican who made it through 2016 in Iowa.
And Steve, one more. Nutmeg State, land of steady habits, recovering from a Democratic governor, one of the most unpopular in the country.
Yeah, and you can see right now Ned Lamont, the Democratic nominee, trying to replace Dan Malloy. Dan Malloy had either some of the lowest or maybe even the lowest approval numbers of any governor in the country, a 35,000 vote gap. Now, if you're a Democrat, you're looking at this and you're saying, well, Hartford, there's no vote in from Hartford yet. These are not counties. These are individual cities and towns. That's how they do it in New England. Hartford, a city of about 115,000. No vote in from there yet. No vote as well in from Bridgeport yet, the 2 biggest cities. So that could give Lamont a boost. But, of course, it's always balanced balanced. They're not big bursts of vote, but you've got all of these sort of outlying Republican areas, too, that are going to come in as well. So Stefanowski leading this thing by 35,000 votes. Of course, Ned Lamont, famously, it was 12 years ago, he challenged Joe Lieberman, the senator, in a Democratic primary, defeated him in the primary, lost to Lieberman, who ran as an independent. Lamont took a shot at the governor's race, got the nomination, but yeah, 35,000 votes behind, about two-thirds, a little more than two-thirds of the vote now in Connecticut.
And if that lead holds for Stefanowski in Connecticut, we could be talking about Republican governors in Connecticut and Vermont and in Massachusetts. So all of our stereotypes have gotten a little bit ugly.
Massachusetts is the state Connecticut lost General Electric to.
Massachusetts has Charlie Baker. I am convinced, as a Massachusetts resident, that he's as popular as sunshine, and I'm convinced the reason is because he doesn't seem at all like Trump, and people are just so excited to have a Republican in mind who has nothing to do with Trump.
There's a drama in every state.
Yep.
Nicole Wallace, what do you have your eyes on?
You know, I think these governor's races are, in some ways, they're more exciting, and we're keeping an eye on them. But I keep coming back to the big political earthquake in Washington, D.C., that tomorrow morning Democrats will be figuring out how to run these committees. That, you know, we have had a Trump presidency which has been norm busting and has debased the dialogue. And, you know, most people with kids don't let them turn on the TV when there's political talk on. All of that is unchanged. What changes is that there is now, Democrats will control all of the committees that can investigate the other half of sort of the scandal that is the Trump presidency, and that's the rampant corruption. The rampant corruption at the agencies. This is the kinds of stories that you make time for, but a lot of us don't. Almost at every agency, there's been some sort of ethics scandal, and it gets scant media coverage, and it has no oversight in Congress. That all changes tomorrow.
Yeah.
Another thing is the control that the House has over all fiscal matters. Everything has to originate in the House. The president cannot have a new tax bill without Nancy Pelosi's approval, which is unlikely. Can't change the entitlement questions about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Can't do any of that stuff that Mitch McConnell was talking about a few weeks ago. All is under the control now of Nancy Pelosi. It's powerful stuff.
Which leads me to believe that Donald Trump is going to be cutting some deals.
He's got it.
He's going to cut some deals because he's at his heart and his core transactional. And we've already seen he doesn't have a problem, at least making those initial entrees to Nancy and Chuck. And now that Nancy has the gavel, the incentive to do that, particularly if he's concerned about legacy and wanting to get at least one big thing done before the 2020 election.
It's going to be an interesting test. I'm very glad you put that. I feel like we're at a sort of fork in the road, and it's not our decision. It's going to be Republicans' decision.
Yep.
Either this is Republicanism with a Trump twist on it, or this is Trumpism, which is built for fighting and not for governing.
Right.
And what we have seen thus far with him in power and with Republicans in control of both the House and the Senate and having no interest in checking him in any way is that since he's been there, he has used the power that he has as president to consolidate power in his own office, in himself singularly.
Right.
He's disempowered the cabinet, disempowered all staffers, disempowered all expert advice that he might get from anybody, disempowered the Congress. They say what they want to do, and he just does his own thing anyway.
Right.
He's consolidated power around himself. He, for the first time, will be checked by another entity that has real, not theoretical, not just media power. Does he crumble in the face of that? Does he see that as a way to just pick new fights? Or does he govern like a Republican might and seek deals? Right. I don't know which way he'll go.
Yeah. I think it's more deal orientation versus crumbling, because the one thing about crumbling, that's failure. And that's not a space he wants to occupy.
He doesn't enjoy confrontation. He's about to get some.
That's right.
But you know, that's so true what you said, and sharply put, because the Republicans have a problem with health care. They don't have a message. They got hurt on it this time. The House, I think the policy people would say we won the House, Democrats, because of their position on health care. He's got to get beyond this pre-existing condition thing that was. We had a joke with a moment ago, and I think he also can do something on infrastructure. We got the word from the House Ways and Means Committee tonight. The staff, they're going to do something there. There's a lot of play here for him to get out of trouble, and maybe we'll get an immigration bill. That's the hardest one.
It just became Wednesday here on the East Coast. It is coming up on 12:03 a.m. For our friends out on the West Coast. The night is young. And here's the story. If you just came in on our conversation, this is what we're talking about. Control of the House of Representatives and all that means will be under the Democratic Party now. Here is our estimate that when all the smoke clears, what the House will look like, Dems versus GOP. The Senate is another story, and it's been kind of a quiet tidal wave tonight as we've watched major members of the Senate on the Democratic side fall, in addition to seats they wanted badly. But here is the current count, and note the gray, as we've been saying all night. 51 confirmed, locked-in GOP. Of course, anything over 50, plus VP Mike Pence, gives you the working majority, especially the way they've been voting. The Dems stand at 43.
And we've been watching a couple of these Senate seats unfold and watching the vote come in. It's been interesting to watch Montana. John Tester, one of those senators who is running in a state that was double digits for Trump. Montana was 20 points for Trump, and Tester's running there. Also in Arizona, it looks like we've got a tight race there in terms of the Senate. So, I mean, right now, the Republicans are at the majority that they've got right now in the Senate. The question is whether or not they are going to build on that. It's not unheard of for parties to add seats in the Senate, even as they lose in the House in a midterm. Ronald Reagan went through that himself when he was at an unpopular point in his presidency in one of his midterms. But the remaining Senate races here that aren't yet called, Florida, Arizona, Maine, Nevada, Montana, these are going to be very important in terms of how much leeway McConnell's got to maneuver in the Senate and what happens in terms of all the all-important confirmation fights.
And here was the heartbreaker for so many Democrats tonight. This is Beto O'Rourke speaking live in Texas.
El Paso has produced some really great teams over the years. And I am very lucky that I got to be part of one that came out of this community. And for the last 22 months, has been traveling every single county of Texas, being there to listen to and show up for every single one of us. I am as inspired, I'm as hopeful as I have ever been in my life. And tonight's loss does nothing to diminish the way that I feel about Texas or this country. Getting to be with and to see all of you tonight reminds me why we set out to do this in the first place. We're not about being against anybody, not about being against another political party. We're not going to define ourselves by who or what we are against or afraid of or scared of. We are great people, ambitious, defined by our aspirations, the hard work that we are willing to commit in order to achieve them. Every single one of us, Republicans, Democrats, independents, from the biggest of cities, from the smallest of towns, the people of Texas want to do and will do the great work of this country. I just now had the opportunity to talk to Senator Cruz and to congratulate him on his victory and to wish him well going forward. And what I said and what I pledged on behalf of all of us is that at this time of division, the country's been as polarized as I can remember it in my life. All this bitterness that defines so much of the national conversation today. If there's anything that we can do to help him in his position of public trust, to ensure that Texas helps to lead this country in a way that brings us back together around the big things that we want to achieve, whether that's making sure We face any threats arrayed against this country, whether that means that we are there for every single one of us who needs a helping hand so that we can live to our full potential, the ability to see a doctor, go to the hospital, receive the medication that you need to be alive. I want to work with him. I will work with anyone to make sure that we can lead on that. You amazing public school educators who work so hard and do so much for so many of us. I'll work with him. I'll work with anyone, anytime, anywhere to make sure in the same way that you've been there for us that now we can be there for you. Not as Democrats, not as Republicans, but as Texans, as Americans. I want to make sure, especially, that this community that raised me, made me who I am, where Amy and I are so lucky and fortunate enough to be raising our kids, Ulysses and Molly and Henry, who are here with us tonight, that we offer our experience and our perspective and our courage and our confidence on the issues that we know best as one half of the largest binational community anywhere in the Americas, joined with Ciudad Juarez to form something powerful, magical, and nothing to be afraid of or walled off or to apologize for. I want to make sure that this proud community offers all it has to give to this country and to our future and to ensuring that our greatest days are still ahead. And that the policy that we craft and the laws that we write and the way in which we treat each other comes not out of fear, but comes out of confidence and strength and this kind heart that I've always known El Paso to have. I don't know any way to say this other than, El Paso, I love you so much. I am so proud of you and this city and this community and what you mean to the rest of this country. And what you have achieved tonight, along with so many other amazing people all across this state. The kindness and generosity that you have shown to me and to Amy, to our family, to our campaign is amazing. It's why my faith in this state and this people as a country is in no way diminished at this moment. I know that we will continue to work to come together, to make sure that we live up to the promise and the potential of this country. I know it because I've met you everywhere that you are. I've listened to you everywhere that you live. I want to thank tonight my family, beginning with Amy, who has borne the toughest burden, raising our kids, supporting me, loving me, giving me strength and encouragement at every step of the way, making sure that we could finish this just as strong as we started it. I want to thank our kiddos. I want to thank my mom and my sisters and our family, all of whom are here tonight, for being such great examples to me. I love you guys. I want to thank this amazing campaign of people, not a dime from a single pack, all people, all the time, in every single part of Texas. All of you showing the country how you do this. I'm so fucking proud of you guys. And David and Jody and Chris and Cynthia and everyone who works on this campaign, every volunteer, every ambassador, everyone who knocked on doors, everyone who made phone calls, everyone who allowed themselves to hope and to believe and to be inspired by one another and to turn that into action and into votes, and to do something that no one thought was possible, to build a campaign like this one, solely comprised of people from all walks of life, coming together, damning the differences, and deciding that what unites us is far stronger than the color of our skin, how many generations we can count ourselves an American, or whether we just got here yesterday, who we love, who we pray to, whether we pray at all, who we voted for last time. None of that small stuff matters now. It is the greatness to which we aspire and the work that we're willing to put into it to achieve it, by which we will be known going forward. And this campaign holds a very special place in the history of this country every day going forward. And you have made that possible.
Sorry about the F-bomb. We have no control over what's in the concession speeches of various candidates around the country. A quick call. While O'Rourke was speaking, we had a race decided in Iowa, gang. Here we go. There's our projection animation. This is Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds, the incumbent, returning. And Steve Kornacki tells us we've had two flips in the intervening moments.
Two more House races to tell you about. Illinois' 14th District, exurbs of Chicago. Romney won this district. Trump won this district. Republican Congressman Randy Holtgren failed to win this district tonight. Lauren Underwood defeating him. We're projecting she leads by less than 5,000 votes right now, but we are projecting her the winner. This will be a Democratic pickup in a district that Donald Trump won. Also, we said it looked like this was going to happen. We now say officially it has happened. Carolyn Bordeaux has unseated Rob Woodall in the 7th district. This was sort of a late arrival on everyone's list. They thought Georgia 6 would be where the action was. Turned out the 7th is the one that's flipped. And one more very quickly that's emerging right now as a story for people watching the House closely. Think of, this is the 1st district of South Carolina. Mark Sanford, remember, unseated in a Republican primary, ousted by Katie Arrington. Look at this. Not a lot of vote left, and Katie Arrington has fallen behind by close to 4,000 votes there.
Wow, there are surprises in these House races. Everybody had been combing every House race in the country looking to see where there were these pickups. I had my eye on that Lauren Underwood race because I felt like she's first-time candidate, incredibly charismatic, was really good at getting press, getting attention, articulating her own message in a way that was so down to earth. She worked her butt off. I was watching her race. I still didn't expect that she was going to win that.
And what's important about that is races like that are the ones where they're not out there trying to get all the attention. They're working beneath the radar. They're doing their business. They're going door to door. They're really like they're running for city council, or something like that. And those races are the ones that sneak up on you oftentimes. It's one of the advantages we had going into 2010 with state legislative races, for example, where you get those pickups where no one's paying attention. And you got the candidate who fits the district, who's saying the right things. We saw it in Virginia earlier this year with the special election there where, the transgendered individual who everybody was running against, hey, she did the job. She went out and said, I'm going to fix the roads and the streets, and she won.
You picked up 63 seats.
63 seats.
Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty good work in 2010.
You get to live, no matter what else you do in your life.
That's right.
That will always be the thing we did as chairman.
63,
and they will never give you credit for it, but we do.
Well, thank you.
In fact, they did not give you credit for it. Anyway, let's bring in around the Democratic National Chairman, Tom Perez, and we've been talking, Tom, and thanks for coming on. We've been talking about trying to figure out what will the Democrats do with their new power, controlling the House of Representatives. You've got the power over the purse strings of the federal budget. You control tax policy, basically, your party does. You control all entitlement spending. You can fix or leave alone Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. You can mess with, of course, Obamacare, if you will, or negotiate some reforms in it. What do you see as your party's role? Is it probing, investigating, or legislating, or what mix?
It's going to be all of the above, because we're going to fight to protect people with pre-existing conditions. We have been doing that since Obamacare, and we're going to continue to do it. We're going to fight to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. I believe we can work through a bipartisan infrastructure bill that will put people to work in good jobs that pay a middle-class wage and can help repair our roads and bridges and our pipes and all that. And those are real jobs that have real meaning. we have to address the challenges confronting dreamers, and we're going to do it. And you know, the appropriations process, you correctly point out, that's a really important period of time for us to say, for instance, to the Commerce Department, you shall not ask questions about immigration status on the census. There's a law. There's a lawsuit about the citizenship issue, and we know that the Commerce Secretary was he had Steve Bannon and others on speed dial when he was doing that. The reasons they articulated for doing that, I know, having led the Civil Rights Division, were absolutely bogus and not based in any sort of fact. So there is a lot of power there, and we're going to use it responsibly to make people's lives better, to focus on the issues that matter most to people. That's what we're going to do.
We've been trying to figure out Donald Trump, like a lot of people are always trying to figure him out, but his pattern hasn't been that productive, or that he hasn't pushed himself as a negotiator. Do you have any hunch about him, now that he's taken a punch in the House of Representatives, his willingness to get down on the table and spend a weekend negotiating with Nancy Pelosi, the new speaker, on immigration, even on health care, on infrastructure, as you mentioned?
Well, we're certainly going to try. You heard Leader Pelosi tonight say we're going to extend that hand, because the American people want solutions. And we will offer solutions on infrastructure. We will offer solutions. We've already offered a solution on the DREAM Act. And one day he said he was for it, and then his base didn't allow him to do it. He has to stand up to his base and say, you know, we are a nation of immigrants and we are a nation of laws, and we can do both. But he has, until now, been unwilling to stand up to his far-right base. And so we're going to keep trying. And we're going to keep fighting for health care. We're going to keep fighting to protect Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and make sure that the Secretary of Education actually supports public education, and the EPA administrator is actually understanding climate science. We're going to do that because that oversight role is absolutely critical, and there has been no guardrails in this Congress. The Republicans have just capitulated at every turn to this president. We need guardrails. We need checks and balances. That's what our system's about.
Tom Perez, chairman of the Democratic National Committee. You've got the House of Representatives. Congratulations, sir. Back to Brian.
And we're going to take a break in our coverage and continue with live returns, including the entire state of California coming in now when we come back. .24 Eastern Time, we are back. We have a barn burner of a story we're covering. Split government, control of the House to the Democrats. The Senate remains Republican control. The hardest working man in show business remains Steve Kornacki at the board. Every spare moment I look over at him, and he's in a different congressional district. Steve, what's the story as you look over your nation of 50 states there?
Yeah, well, it's still unfolding. I mean, I'll give you three real close ones we have right now. First of all, the Arizona Senate race. This is Martha McSally and Kyrsten Sinema. Take a look here. Of course, Arizona, all of that early voting. We get so much of the vote very quickly on election day. You see McSally leading right now. Look at the margin. 3,500 votes. You can see 60% of the vote comes from one county in Arizona, Maricopa County. And you can see, look at this. This is why it's so close. Hillary Clinton lost this state by 3 points in 2016. She lost this county by 3 points. Sinema has managed so far with about 84% in there to reverse that. And that's why it's basically deadlocked statewide. So that's a razor-thin race. We've been updating you on the Wisconsin governor's race. This thing has taken a turn for the closer. A 6,000 vote margin right now, separating Scott Walker from Tony Evers, Democratic challenger. One place to keep an eye on there. We updated this about a half an hour ago. Still, nothing more has come in from Brown County, probably the biggest piece of real estate left on the board where Walker can pick up some votes. Also, last time, they're down to their final precincts here in Madison-Dane County. Every new precinct that reports here is giving assistance to Evers. And one other razor-thin race I want to go back to. We mentioned this earlier. This is kind of wild here. Let me see if I can fire it. It's Georgia's 6th district. So remember I showed you this a little while ago. It was down to 800 votes. Well, it shrunk a little bit.
Oh, geez.
It's down to 169 votes.
Wow.
At this moment, there is one precinct in this entire district that is uncounted. It is in Cobb County. So Karen Handel has been winning here in Cobb County. We think there is one precinct left in this district. You can see Handel's been leading there, so that lead there of 169 votes will probably go up just a little bit, but there is a recount provision that we are almost certain is going to be triggered, and so Georgia 6 looks like it's on its way to a... So they had the election in 2016, the special election in 2017, tonight's election, and now it looks like a recount. We're never going to get Georgia 6 out of the news.
Steve, can I ask you about a couple of governor's races in the Northeast?
Yes.
I'm interested in this, what we're seeing is sort of a GOP bubble in terms of governorships in the Northeast. Do you have anything on the Connecticut governor's race, and do you have anything on the Maine governor's race?
Yes, so the gap here has been closed to 25,000. Lamont still 25,000 behind here. You can see in Connecticut now more than 3/4 of the vote has been counted for. Still, though, you can see the city of Hartford, no votes in yet from the city of Hartford. You expect a boost there for Ned Lamont. But again, he is running from behind, and there are some of these other Republican areas still to come as well. Let's see if we can go up here to Maine and get this loaded in. Yes, there you go. And Janet Mills in the early going in Maine. And again, Maine, this is not a county-based system. So what you're seeing here are individual municipalities here. Mills, though, being helped that Portland right now, the city of Portland, the population center there, the vote disproportionately being counted from Portland right now, giving her that early gigantic advantage you see there in Maine, but we'll keep an eye on that one, obviously, as well as more vote comes in. Oh, one more thing I want to tell you about a development here. I meant to hit the Senate side here. Nevada, we all want to know who is going to win the Senate race. Heller, Rosen. The polls, you say, wait a minute, the polls in Nevada closed a couple of hours ago. Well, here's what they do in Nevada. If anybody is in line, I sound like a New Yorker now. I'm from Massachusetts. We say in line. If anybody is in line while at the close of polls, the polls stay open until everybody's voted, and no votes are counted or are released anywhere. And so we are still waiting for the first release of votes from Nevada now, a couple of hours after the polls closed. Apparently, there's been news reports that Dean Heller even spoke to his supporters, wasn't declaring victory or anything, but just came down to say something because everybody is waiting right now in Nevada.
Well, Steve, I have to ask you to go over to the Senate race that remains outstanding in Florida as well because of a similar sort of news report that I want to get at. Obviously, we've got this as too close to call in Florida between Rick Scott, the incumbent governor, and Bill Nelson, the incumbent senator there. We've been watching that incredibly closely all night. Two things to draw people's attention to, and I just want to check this out with you. As far as I understand it, if the distance between the two candidates is within a 0.5 percentage point, there will be a recall in Florida. And so that may be potentially a live issue here. But then I also, Steve, want to tell you this new reporting that we just got from Ali Vitale in Florida, who says a Nelson staffer made this announcement at his event, confirmed to me by another Nelson staffer. Quote, "This is obviously not the result Senator Nelson's campaign has worked hard for. The senator will be making a full statement tomorrow to thank all those who rallied for his cause." Not quite sounding like a concession, but how does that map onto what you're seeing in terms of the Florida data?
Yeah, so there's always the possibility, especially Volusia Broward, and that's why I'm just checking here to make sure nothing's changed. There's been some confusion through the night with, it looks like the entire county's come in, then it turns out sometimes we have these spotters in the field. It turns out, oh no, there's 10 precincts left over here, over there. That was happening earlier. We were seeing that in Broward in particular. We were seeing that in Volusia. I don't think that's an issue anymore. I'm going to go double check that right now. But yes, you're right in terms of that recount right now. 0.6 percentage point separating Rick Scott from Bill Nelson. Scott leading by 0.6 percentage point. So right now outside of that zone. But I think obviously whenever it gets that close, whenever the stakes are this high, not uncommon for campaigns to buy themselves a little time, like it sounds like Nelson's folks might be trying to do here.
Wow. We have been joined here in our studio by a friend of ours, Maria Teresa Kumar, head of Voto Latino.
Good to have you here. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. Your full-time job is mobilizing Latino votes. Are you declaring a victory in that effort tonight?
I'm declaring a victory that as before polls were closed, we had 3.3 million Latinos cast early votes, twice the amount that happened in 2014. So that's a big deal. And one of the things that we're seeing is that they were in pockets that we expected. We saw a huge increase in Texas, but Virginia, believe it or not, Georgia, North Carolina, places where historically the Latino vote does not move mountains, is moving mountains and shaking it up. But we are also seeing for the very first time, we're seeing a lot of firsts in this Congress. We're seeing over 22 women basically joining Congress, 15 of them who actually flipped Congress as well. Flipped the seats. This is going to be the very first time we're going to have roughly 100 women elected all at once in one single night. We're going to see the youngest women ever go to Congress. We're going to see 2 Muslim American women go to Congress. There's a lot to celebrate. And the Democrats, for the very first time, have a fresh, young bench that actually reflects the party they claim to represent.
What do you make of what we saw in the early exit polls, national exit polls from NBC? We're used to skipping over the top line of all of those because every election you ask people, what's the most important issue? They say the economy. Yeah. Not today. Number one issue was health care, which is what Democrats were banking on in so many of their swing races right now. Number 2 issue, immigration. Knocking the economy down to third. Obviously, making immigration the most important issue for voters was a goal of the president, making immigration a most important issue for voters in a negative way. How does that map onto the kind of Latino turnout and the character of the Latino vote that you saw tonight?
Well, this was interesting. When you looked at young Latino voters, healthcare was their number one issue because it wasn't just them, but if their parents all of a sudden do not have a safety net, they have to quit college and they have to go basically support them. I mean, that is very much what changes their dynamic. But immigration also rallied the Latino vote because they heard the crying call of, we have been at the crosshairs of this administration from the very beginning, and he keeps going after the Latinos, not just on immigration, but this idea of denaturalization task force, this idea that all of a sudden you can be serving in the military and that we're going to pull you out, even though you've actually demonstrated that you should be participating. And the Latino community heard that loud and clear. And again, the people that were registering in record numbers in Texas were young Latino voters. Texas has the lowest voter participation, lowest participation in all 50 states. They had participation increase by over 500% just among young people right before the polls closed. Wow. It's a big deal.
It'll be fascinating, given that the impact of the Texas Senate race tonight will not be felt immediately in the Senate because Ted Cruz will go back. But the impact in Texas in terms of what the electorate is like in Texas and how you run to win in Texas will change forever.
Well, the fact that Pete Sessions lost, that is perhaps one of his safest seats. The Republicans should have taken that. The fact that he lost is one of the most unreported stories.
Yeah, 11-term incumbent. Speaking of unreported stories, our own Ari Melber has been doing some reporting behind the scenes tonight, including talking to some of the Democrats who are going to be in charge of key elements of the of the congressional leadership in the House. And Ari, I've just received a note that says that you have spoken with Congressman Jerry Nadler. He's the likely incoming chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Obviously, everybody hears Judiciary Committee, they think Watergate and they think impeachment proceedings. Congressman Nadler has made clear that's not what he wants to talk about. That's not what he sees as central to his role on the Judiciary Committee. What did he tell you tonight about what his priorities are going to be?
That's right, Rachel. I spoke to Jerry Nadler, who's the top Democrat ranking member, which means he's most likely to chair the committee. And he put down a marker on the record when we spoke. And he said, if now Donald Trump tries to sabotage the Mueller probe or interfere by firing, quote, key people or abusing the pardon power, then, quote, all options are on the table. He didn't use the I word, impeachment, and as you say, they've been careful about that. But when someone running the Judiciary Committee in the House says all options are on the table, that's a clear marker. I also asked him point blank, okay, but what if there are other things done to slow the Mueller probe? What can you do if there's still this Republican Senate? And he said, for example, he didn't want to do hypotheticals, Rachel, but he said they have the power to order all documents legally preserved. That could include sealed indictments, grand jury material, other things that are legally protected. So this is another way that we're seeing directly from people on the staff of these committees, or in this case, the ranking member himself, outlining very clearly in public what they want to do. I also asked him, Rachel, about the potential removal of Jeff Sessions. And there he struck an interesting note. He said it would be suspicious if Donald Trump moves with haste to try to get rid of Jeff Sessions after these midterms. But his line is not the removal of Sessions, but he told me rather who would be put in. And is it a person that they see as designed to interfere with the probe or not?
Now, in terms of what you just said, Ari, about the preservation of documents. I mean, one of the things that we don't necessarily know, but we've been anticipating about Mueller is that he may make some sort of report to Congress. And that if he makes a report to Congress, Congress is going to have to decide what to do with it. Now, if that report goes to a Republican-controlled committee, we had a pretty good guess what might happen to that sort of a report. It might just disappear and never be heard from again. When Nadler talks about preserving documents, is he talking about making sure that any public production or congressional production from Mueller sees the light of day and gets to the public? Or is he talking about the risk that Mueller's office might be shut down, in which case his committee would try to physically preserve the material evidence that Mueller has collected?
I think in our conversation today over the phone, he was talking about the latter, the emergency preservation, because we do know that if there was a potentially unlawful removal of Bob Mueller, that itself would end up in court, but that takes time. He's saying the big difference starting tonight is that the Democrats have the legal authority to preserve everything even before the courts act. I think more broadly, we know from the Ken Starr precedent, there's the report that's issued that can guide the House, and then there's everything else that's in those files. And so it matters a lot right now that the Democrats have this extra power here to basically be a police bumper, a police line for this open investigation.
Ari Melber, that's great reporting. You're adding a lot to our understanding about what it means for the Democrats to be taking control of the House with tonight's elections. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
A bit of news from upstate New York. Chris Collins has won re-election to the House.
While under indictment.
Way up there, yep.
That's not that easy. You got to give him credit. When you're facing federal corruption charges, that's a hurdle that most people don't have.
That is an uncommon hurdle, but he's been richly rewarded for staying in the race. His victory tonight over Nate McMurray in the northern tier of upstate New York.
Congratulations, District 27.
And let us, without delay, go out to El Paso, Texas, where Chris Hayes is under active threat of being asked by security to leave. The party's over, as the song says. Chris, what's your after-action report on what you witnessed there tonight?
I mean, look, I think that all the talk about Beto as sort of a national political figure after tonight is not wrong. I mean, part of it is the baseline against which he was performing has been so dire and so terrible for Texas Democrats for so long. And what he was able to pull off, and every Texas Democrat will tell you this, it helped everywhere in the party. It helped. The Texas Democrats tonight had a good night for the first time in a long time. And one thing I think you saw in that speech is Democrats are trying to figure out how to craft a message in the Trump era, in some ways, how to keep the Obama coalition, which was a majority coalition for 2 presidential elections, together. And they've got a hard job, right? Because they have to cobble together lots of different groups. They have to get a bunch of different kinds of demographics into the same tent. And one of the things you saw from Beto in his message, it's relentlessly positive, it's upbeat, it's about unity. And that harkens back to Barack Obama in 2004 with that famous DNC speech and the campaign he ran in 2008. And I think that there's something about that for Democrats as they think about what their message is when you are trying to put together a genuinely diverse and multiracial coalition, which is the only one that will work for a Democratic Party, both in the state of Texas, in other places, and nationally. You got to figure about what it is that binds people together and what unites them. And that's a hard thing, I think, to talk about in this current environment. But I think Beto was rewarded with the kind of result you saw tonight with that kind of message.
One follow-up would be a harsh-sounding point/question, and that is Barack Obama won.
Yep. Yeah, and I don't know, there's no precedent really for someone to run nationally after what Beto's done, except for basically Abraham Lincoln, who, of course, famously lost his Senate race. It's a very tough hill to climb. But the other thing of the Trump era is who the heck knows, right? I mean, Donald Trump's the president of the United States. So no one knows. And I've said all along, the odds of the 2020 Democratic nominee being someone whose name wasn't even on people's radar screen in mid-2018 is particularly high. So you never know in American politics in the year of 2018.
Chris Hayes out in El Paso, where the stadium lights have come on, indicating the end of the night and the end of the Beto O'Rourke campaign. More indictment news.
Yeah, I just got to say, we're on a roll here. We just were talking about Chris Collins, the indicted New York congressman. He's under federal felony indictment, which doesn't mean like they're thinking about charging him. He's under investigation. Like, no, he's been charged with felonies. He's going to be on trial. Chris Collins has just been reelected in New York 27. And the other sitting Republican congressman who has been charged with 60 felonies, Duncan Hunter, has been charged with a 60-count federal corruption indictment, and Duncan Hunter has just been reelected by the proud voters of California Congressional District 50.
But Republican values, they do not value law-abiding. It's so funny. I mean, for Donald Trump, lock her up, law and order. Like, we've now got two indicted Republicans who won tonight. Republicans no longer.
When we saw Blum in Iowa, Blum is not under indictment, but he's facing a very serious ethics charge that he was basically running a fake business out of his congressional office. There's going to be an ethics report about him next month, and so being reelected. So that means that, I mean, what he's been indicted for in part is using his campaign money to live off of.
Yeah, I mean, listen,
now he's going to be using his campaign money presumably to pay his defense lawyers.
These two could go to jail, and it would be funny if it wasn't sad, or sad if it wasn't funny. And two words, tactical pants. I mean, this was a cabinet with a bunch of because it's
Scott Pruitt is going to walk in here and show you his pants.
The corruption, the volume business of corruption, and ethics is putting it kindly. These guys are charged with serious crimes.
Yeah, multiple felonies.
Not just
but in the
corruption.
California race, what's interesting is that they went after. This is a former Obama alum when that was running, and they basically went after and threw the book at him, basically calling him that he was part of ISIS and he was part of this Muslim.
He was infiltrating the Congress for the Muslim Brotherhood.
It was terrible, and to actually see that in California itself, a bastion of liberalism, I think there's a lot to unpack there.
And he was a national security. Can we put the board back up there on the Duncan Hunter race? Is that possible? I don't know if that's already cycled through. But he was a national security official in the Obama administration to the extent that he had multiply renewed security clearances. And Duncan Hunter went after him as literally a security threat. But the voters of Congressional District 50 in California have rewarded Mr. Hunter. If he does go to jail, they will have to make a decision about whether they're comfortable with him still representing them in Congress from prison. But that'll be soon.
Could you imagine those fundraising emails?
You're being too specific. He's a bad guy.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure he's a nice guy to his friends, but he's going to jail in all likelihood.
On that note, we're going to change Steve Kornacki's SIM card, and we will be back with more returns after this break.
In the great state of Maine, NBC News can now project that Paul LePage, controversial Republican governor, will be succeeded by a woman and a Democrat. Sean Moody has conceded the Republican running against Janet Mills. Janet Mills will become the first woman governor of Maine, I believe, and a Democrat succeeding the controversial, sort of pugnacious governor of Maine, Paul LePage, who was Trumpy before Trump. Governor LePage, on the eve of the election, announced to his constituents that now that he was leaving office as governor, he'd be moving to Florida full-time.
Yep.
Literally, he announced
that
yesterday.
The climate is better and the taxes are less.
Yeah. So again, had he said that earlier on, it would have shed some light on his governing decisions.
So enough of Maine winners for the former governor of the state. Yeah. We are joined by a great friend of ours, Michael Beschloss, the author and presidential historian who's been, I understand, very patient waiting to talk to us. Michael, let's talk about the accumulation and awarding of power and what the Democrats might do with that. I suppose it is possible that they will overreach, but have you been able to grab any parallels given your vast knowledge of history tonight?
Yeah, I could talk to you until the cows come home, Brian, about 1946 when Truman lost both houses, or, 1994 when Bill Clinton did the same thing. But I think tonight is something that we haven't seen before in American history, because we are watching a House of Congress pass from the party of a president at the same time as there is a serious investigation by a special prosecutor that is really a danger to this administration. At a time where we've seen enormous corruption and abuse of power, to my mind, even during the last couple of weeks. You know, the use by a president of armed forces to go down to the border for a threat that I think was, to a great degree, contrived to help him win this election. And the other thing that we've seen that's unusual is that we've seen lapdog leaders of his own party. You know, many people felt that when Donald Trump became president, the Republicans owned the House and Senate, at least there would be some criticism from the Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan. I think most people have been as astounded that he has been as compliant as he has been. So if this didn't happen tonight, you could have seen the Mueller report deep sixed, all those things metastasize.
Is there anything in you that leads you to believe that the most momentous portion of the Trump administration is yet to come? Forget what we've just witnessed for 2 years.
Oh, I think absolutely. But it might have been more momentous if he had still owned both houses of Congress, because he would have felt licensed to do all sorts of things that he will now think twice about, now that he has to confront a Democratic House with power of subpoena and investigation. James Madison would love this. He would have been horrified by the idea that a president could have gone on for 4 years with not only owning the House and Senate, but now with a 5-justice majority in the Supreme Court, and the 5th justice, someone that Donald Trump chose, I believe, because Brett Kavanaugh had the most extremely permissive views of how much power a president can have.
Republicans are fond of reminding everyone that they are the party of Lincoln. We have heard the president say that recently. We can't assume, but with the air of someone who learned it fairly recently, parties go through cycles and they change their definitions. Are we seeing any of that? Is it like the eye wall replacement cycle in a hurricane?
I think Abraham Lincoln, if he were to come back, he would not recognize his party. And it may be that if the Republican Party wants to make a change at some point in history, they may feel that they need to change the name. That has happened with other parties earlier in our history. The Whigs flamed out in the 1850s.
I'm on record as being a friend, but I'm also just a reader. And so on that basis, to our viewers, I can't recommend Presidents of War, Michael's new book, highly enough, having just completed it. Michael, thank you for your patience.
Thank you so, Brian.
Thanks
so
for
much,
coming
Brian.
on the air.
Thank you.
One of the things that we are still watching for tonight, and we're actually expecting it to be a big bunch of news when it finally comes in, is the results from contested House races in California. Now, polls are closed in California. They've been closed for well over an hour. And there's, you know, from a distance going into tonight, the biggest group of any state's House races that the Democrats are hoping to flip was in California. Democrats are hoping to flip as many as 7. Now, on a night like tonight, the Democrats are already closing in on a 30-seat gain in the House of Representatives, which is a big gain for any midterm election. But that's before any of these California races are counted. Our friend Jacob Soboroff has been on the ground for us in Santa Ana, California, not only watching what voters are doing, but watching what's expected in terms of the process. Jacob?
Rachel, so this is not only extraordinarily consequential, as you are describing, but also for people like me and you guys who are nerdy about elections, this is really, really cool. Come with me. So what's happening right now is literally hundreds of thousands of ballots from across Orange County, California are being unloaded from all these different vans that are being brought back here. They have little chips, and they're inside each one of these boxes. I'm going to let you watch that one go by, but they're taken out one at a time. So we'll watch this next one come out. They're coming from 1,000 different polling places from across Orange County. Let's follow this one in. They put them on this conveyor belt. They push them down the conveyor belt into this warehouse that is run by the Orange County Register. Come on, let's go. We're going down with this one ballot. Who knows? This could be thousands of ballots on a little chip that's inside here. Neil Kelly, my friend, is the registrar. You guys see where Neil went? Sheriffs, they're very serious, but this is a secure area. There he is. Neil Kelly is the registrar. Okay, here we go. They're coming. Neil, we're live on the air. Come on over. This man is responsible for not only 4 toss-up congressional districts, but ultimately, I guess, how many seats the Democrats gained in the House. It's a lot of pressure on you as the registrar. It's the 5th largest election jurisdiction in the country. All these chips are coming in, hundreds of thousands of votes. You seem very calm.
I am calm, but thanks for reminding me about the pressure, because there is a lot of pressure involved in this. But, you know, these folks work really hard, and we've been preparing for this for a long time.
I actually want to ask you a quite serious question. You and I were talking yesterday about the fact that you have been on the Homeland Security Election Advisory Committee task force. For 2 years, you've been working with the FBI. You said that you have been probed, scanned by foreign actors, foreign governments, including Russia and China. What does that mean? Should the voters of Orange County be worried about the integrity of the vote counting process tonight?
That's a great question. The answer is no, because we've done a lot of work over the last 2 years to make sure we're resilient and prepared for this. And I can tell you right now that those efforts are paying off. This security is secure, the ballots are secure, and we're ready for it.
All right, Neil, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Rachel Bryan, come with me. I want to show you just one more thing. So once these things ultimately get unloaded, they take the chips out of the machine. So here's the machines over here. They open them. Can you open that up real quick, just one more time? These are the vote counting machines that are actually in each of the polling places. They take a chip out of them, and then they come over to here. They get one of these little things that looks like kind of like a thermos. They put the chips inside here. They open up this spot. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have done that. It goes into this tube right here, pneumatic tube, shot up, and over into the counting room where they're going to count these hundreds. I think I really screwed something up here, so maybe I should throw it back to you guys.
Oh, Jacob, so you were just used past a very serious-looking sheriff. Is he coming for you?
No, they're okay. They're over there. They've turned the other way. The alarm stopped. I think we're good.
Okay,
so pneumatic tube is safe.
Put the tube down.
Put the thermos down.
Put it down, Jacob. And keep your hands where everybody can see them. Okay, thank you.
That's true. All right, thank you. I guess I should throw it back to you guys then for now.
That's great.
Yes, very good.
Somebody
Jacob
just lost by
Soboroff.
50,000 votes.
Yes, exactly. Jacob Soboroff doing a great job. Also totally innocent. We should point out. There goes the alarm again.
Step away from the pneumatic tube.
I think we should stay on that. I mean, I honestly feel like anything could happen.
Well, we do need to keep rolling just in case we need to use it in court.
Yeah.
But he seems all right.
I think they like it.
Orange County, we should say, where Jacob was just live there at the facility where they're taking in those votes. Orange County's got 4 toss-up races. I mean, that registrar of voters there, who does have, I talked to Jacob about this earlier this week, does have the support of everybody who's expert in the field in the area, but it's seen as, it's hugely populated. It's going to be a ton of votes, and it could be a very big chunk of the Democratic majority in the House.
Steve Schmidt, forgive me, sorry.
Please.
I was just going to ask you about election integrity. Most of what we talk to you on the air about is what has happened vis-a-vis Russia and this administration. We're covering a lot of incoming numbers tonight. People have gone to the polls with that inherent American promise in mind that your vote will be recorded and has integrity. Do you think all Americans can assume that tonight about every vote we've cast?
I have faith in the integrity of the election system, but the integrity of the election system has been undermined over the last 2 years by the faithlessness of this administration and specifically the president with regard to getting to the bottom of the foreign interference in the 2016 presidential election. Trust, faith, and belief are the lubricants of a democracy. And when trust collapses and faith erodes, belief also collapses. And so the integrity of the election system is fundamental to the democracy, and there's no higher duty that any Republican president would have, any Democratic president would have, than to maintain that integrity and the trust of it for the American people, that no matter the outcome, right? Parties win elections, parties lose elections. You come back and you try to win the next one, but that both sides understand that when the voters speak, that the judgment is final, and that both sides accept the result and we move on. And that's the tragedy of the dereliction of duty we've seen over the last 2 years.
Chris?
And, you know, what did you make of the fact that in 2016, when Trump thought he was going to lose, he started playing with the idea of a rigged election? He's throwing that out there. And he did it again the other day. I'm not sure he won't do it tomorrow morning when we wake up and said the House is gone because they stole it.
We've seen it all through the evening, and the difficulty of the concession speech. It's a painful moment for a candidate. But, for example, when John McCain conceded to President Obama, the first person who mattered that addressed Barack Obama as Mr. President-elect wasn't David Axelrod or David Plouffe. It was John McCain. The loser grants legitimacy to the winner of an American election through their concession. And in a presidential election, that concession commences the peaceful transition of power, which happens on the inauguration day. The concessions today begin the peaceful transition between senators, between members of Congress. It takes place with the swearing in of the new Congress in January. It's an important moment.
I'm told Steve Kornacki has, what do we have, a correction of some numbers?
Yes, we do. We were telling you earlier about the 7th District of Georgia. It called the 7th District of Georgia for Carolyn Bourdeaux over Rob Woodall, the Republican incumbent. We are being told there was a data entry error, not on our end, I am told, but nonetheless a data entry error, and it has changed, as you can see, the trajectory of this race. Rob Woodall, who had been trailing, now leads by 6,000 votes over now that has adjusted to reflect that. Rob Woodall leading by 6,000 votes there. A couple of precincts left. We're obviously still just trying to sort this out. If we're going to characterize this again, want to make sure we get it right, because this was a Democratic pickup a minute ago in the suburbs of Atlanta, now looking like something else.
Can we go next door to Georgia 6?
Yes, and that is, I believe, status quo. No, and Handle, okay, that final precinct did come out. So there was one outstanding precinct from Cobb County, and you can see right here that Handle picked up my head here. That's about 1,588 votes, I think, separating them. And I believe that is within a point there. So that still looks like recount territory in the 6th District of Georgia.
Excellent. Thank you, Steve. That is very rare then that when a call like that has to be changed. But having transparency that it was a data entry error at least helps explain what happened.
And you have to wonder, we don't know what has happened on the ground. Was there a concession? Was there a victory party? Was this a data entry error on a local or statewide basis? Did everyone report this way?
So it's always troubling when it happens that way. But that's, there's a gazillion races. There's hundreds of races tonight, and that's going to happen at some point.
I see Steve has just refreshed his board to show the Senate races. What do we have?
Yeah, let's take a look here in Montana. We showed you earlier John Tester. He continues to lead. It's tight right now, though, a little tighter than before. A 3,000 vote edge for Tester. Two things are happening here. There is such a thing in Montana as a core Democratic area. One, Glacier County, yet to be reported there. So we're waiting on that one. We also have a Cascade. This is just sort of the early vote that's tallied here. A lot more to come. Tester should pick up some. And also here, no vote here. So Tester has 3 counties. The thing that we are seeing, though, and the reason it's tight, and I think this gets into a national trend we've been seeing, is these rural areas. And we saw this in the South, and I think we're seeing this a bit in Montana as well. These rural areas that swung so hard to Trump. Tester is doing better than Hillary Clinton did in them, but he is not doing as well as he did when he won re-election in 2012. And so that's why he's sort of exceeding in the western part of the state. He's exceeding the numbers he had when he won re-election. But in some of those rural parts in the east, he's not matching those numbers. And so there's sort of that trade-off, that balancing act we're seeing for Republicans. They're getting blown out in a lot of these suburbs now where Donald Trump didn't do well in 2016. But their strength in a lot of these rural areas, these ex-urban areas, it is more pronounced maybe in the Trump era. Quickly, just to show you where things stand in Arizona. Now Martha McSally, just in the last few minutes, has taken an 11,000 vote lead over Kyrsten Sinema. We can show you the story here. Again, more than 60% of the vote in the state is going to come out of Maricopa County. And what happened here, Sinema is still leading in Maricopa County, but her lead has shrunk. It was about 3 points. The last sort of flurry of votes that came in favored McSally. It brought her to within a point in Maricopa, and also that did bring her into the lead statewide. Still more vote to come there. That's primarily where the action is in Arizona. So obviously this is a very important race for Democrats now, just in the sense that they have lost so many other seats tonight. This would be a pickup if they are able to get it.
Much appreciated, Steve. Thank you.
Another result from California, Devin Nunes has won re-election.
Yes, Devin Nunes has not won re-election as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee.
No.
He will now be he will either move off of that committee or he will go back to being the ranking member. Devin Nunes was a target both for Democrats and Republicans nationwide. He received a tsunami of Republican money because of his role on the Intelligence Committee, using that committee to the benefit of President Trump to such incredible conservative media acclaim. Andrew Jans gave him a run for his money in his district. Things aren't usually even that close for Devin Nunes in his deeply conservative district, but obviously Devin Nunes winning comfortably tonight at home in California, 22.
Don't know about the Rohrabacher race with any certainty yet. Our man in California is Lawrence O'Donnell and is standing by. Lawrence, California never disappoints.
Yes, and California's job now is simply to say, in the end, what is the ultimate margin that the Democrats will have in the House of Representatives. They obviously have it, and now it's just down to that. And as Rachel just mentioned, Devin Nunes will not be chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and that is among the many important developments tonight that changes with the House. Donald Trump's political life and his legal life changes utterly tonight. Robert Mueller cannot be fired. That threat is over. Donald Trump will try to fire him again. He will want to try to fire him again. But more than one voice in the White House will explain to him that if he does that, the House of Representatives will begin an impeachment investigation that day. And so Robert Mueller is one of the big winners tonight in terms of the security of his position and in his ability to go forward with his special prosecuting investigation. And that is a change for Donald Trump. The game he's been playing with the firing of Jeff Sessions, which has always been about the firing of Robert Mueller, because you get, or basically the removal of Robert Mueller's effectiveness by putting a new attorney general supervising Robert Mueller. That game ended tonight. And that is a huge change for the future of the Trump presidency and for the future of the way things are going to work in Washington.
Lawrence, I've just been told the Republicans have grabbed South Dakota governor. Noem is the victor after a long night. Kristi Noem from the House of Representatives has defeated Billy Sutton with 94% of the raw in. That is our projection. And Mr. Kornacki has alerted us to a drama in Wisconsin. We've been covering this on a slow motion basis all night.
It feels like about 2 years ago at this time we had some drama in Wisconsin. So here we go again. Scott Walker trying to hang on, win a third term. Also, he survived that recall. Right now, he trails Tony Evers by just over 6,000 votes. Now, you see most of the map filled in here. There are a few pockets left, though, where Walker can still pick up some votes and eat into that margin. He could eliminate the margin, in fact, probably in Brown County, where Green Bay is. Still half the vote, at least, to come there. A significant lead for Walker. But here is the suspense. Here's the wild card, and here is the drama. Take a look here at Milwaukee County, obviously huge Democratic area. We have just been told that the city of Milwaukee has 45,000 uncounted absentee ballots that are going to be counted in the next hour. And so that is the biggest single wild card that we were not even aware of until a few minutes ago that has the potential to alter the math. There are some areas, we showed you Brown County, there are some other areas in the state where Scott Walker can pick up a lot of vote. There is one giant one left there for Democrats as well. And again, with Evers clinging to a 6,000 vote lead right now.
Wow.
Steve, where do you, in terms of with those votes yet to be counted and the timing on those getting counted, what does that mean in terms of how you think this is going to play out ultimately?
Yeah, I mean, this was a complete surprise to me because I was doing the math here just a minute ago, and we were looking at it, and, we were saying it was all going to come down to Brown County right here. And again, you can see the 11,000 vote advantage that Scott Walker has right there. You would look at this, you'd look at this is a 2-to-1 margin. It's been steady all night. We're talking about a core Democratic area. So I think you'd look at that and you'd say the expectation is, you just do the math if you extrapolate that. And I'm not saying it's going to end up this way, but that's about 30,000 to 15,000 if it breaks the same way. Maybe it's more Democratic than that, but that would be a 15,000 vote edge right there if it just broke the way the vote is in Milwaukee County right now. And there was a little more vote that just came in as I went to the screen. I can see we're at about 6,218 votes right now. If you added 15,000, then you'd be up over 20,000. And then you go into Green Bay here with about half. Ooh. That could bring it back down just under 10,000. There are some other areas for Walker, too. very, very tight. That's what it looks like.
The reason I asked you to clarify is I was trying to do that math with you as you were explaining it, and for me, it looked like it added right up for Evers, and then it added right back down to 0.
Yeah.
That may end up, I mean, depending, we'll see how they come in. Votes are votes, but we'll see how they come in. This may end up being an absolute squeaker in Wisconsin. And again, if Scott Walker survives for a 4th straight governor's race in Wisconsin, he should get something other than just being governor again. There should be like some belt,
trophy,
a cake, something.
Belt buckle?
Belt buckle, gigantic Wisconsin belt buckle, maybe cheese. I don't know.
Look at that. Look at that board. Can we go back to the Steadicam shot of the governors? Important to. It's been such a long night. Some reminders there. Florida, Ohio. These are big states and big Republican victories tonight, especially for DeSantis.
Yeah, but look at, I mean, the Kansas governorship, Laura Kelly beating Chris Kobach.
Yep.
Also a big deal. Michigan governor going to the Democrats after the long reign of Rick Snyder there and his attorney general, Bill Schuette, trying to win there. It's interesting. I mean, the fact that we've still got Georgia outstanding, we still got Wisconsin outstanding, we still got Montana and Arizona Senate outstanding, plus we've got all of those California House races outstanding. We knew it was going to be a late night. I didn't think we'd have a lot of these top-of-the-ticket races still.
You tried to warn me on Sunday about the lateness. The other thing, though, about Florida has had Republican governors, I think, for more than 20 years. I mean, these are pretty red states. The bigger story might have been that Democrats came so close in all 3 of them.
Yeah, that is true.
I do think that one of the things as we're approaching 1 a.m., a little bit after 1 a.m., when we look at the totals coming in, Democrats are going to win by about 9% the popular vote for these House races in an economy with an unemployment rate of 3.7%. This is a massive repudiation of the governing party. You have to handicap this by the redistricting and gerrymandering. We live in a country substantially where the politicians pick their voters. But when you look at the numbers in an economy like this is a very big night for the Democratic Party. The Republican Party has gotten smaller tonight, and it will be crazier tomorrow morning. You will see the House Freedom Caucus grow from 30 members to 45. You're likely to see leadership fights inside the Republican Party, and the Republicans will not look at the popular vote loss and come to the conclusion that they've been repudiated. They'll look at races like Florida and Texas and say, hey, we won, even though the Democrats were knocking on the window in Republican states. And the lesson that they'll learn from it is the wrong lesson, that Trump's incitement politics works. The Freedom Caucus, which imposed on the Republican conference the removal of the pre-existing conditions protection, all these Republicans were wiped out because of it, and the result of it will be a larger Freedom Caucus. And this is the death spiral that the California Republican Party that Nicole and I are familiar with has been in for 20 years.
I'm told James Carville has rejoined us. And James, you're the perfect person to bring into this conversation. To Steve's point, this just leaves on its ear that argument about elections in a good economy. This reverses 50 years of political bromides.